Andrew, we're at downtown Toronto, and it's, well, absolutely marvelous being here. And also listening to music because we are with Dan Bickle. Dan, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for receiving us in such a wonderful place. You're the director of SingTO, and you're also St. Andrew's musical director, is it correct?
That's correct.
What are your responsibilities as St. Andrew's musical director? What are your tasks?
I play the public services. I conduct the professional choir that sings most of them, and I now conduct an amateur choir as well. I run SingTO, I run Friday noontime recitals, and an evening concert series as well.
And what is SingTO? I know what is because I'm into SingTO, but what's the concept? Why did you decide to start SingTO?
Actually, I didn't decide to do SingTO. A group of parishioners. There's a group in the congregation called Growth and Innovation, who look at creative ways of reaching out into the community, and they proposed that we look at starting a community choir, and asked me to join that group that was doing the planning, which I did, and did some research for them, and then they asked me to conduct the thing, at least at the beginning.
By the way, so. you can do it. When did it start?
It started a year ago, September.
And how do you get the different voices? Because, I got in touch with it because, I'm like fond of film festivals, and I was attending TIFF, and then I saw a sign, but also I think there was like through meetup people. How did you get different people?
I think you've pretty much covered it all. We put signs out on the street, and we did a meetup advertising, and they just started to come in the door.
How was it last year?
It was a very interesting start. We had 35 or so people who attended regularly, and by the end of the season, in May, they did a very nice concert. They worked hard, and then we reopened it in the fall, and of course we're growing again. We're now around 60 voices through Meetup, basically.
Yeah. But also, I would like you to talk about your musical background, because piano is like, you know the piano since you were maybe 10 years old or even earlier? How do you get along with the piano?
Well, I grew up in a musical household. My parents sang all the time. There was music all the time in the household. And my grandmother bought my dad a piano when I was a young boy, and at 10 I was given lessons, and then it progressed from there. I ended up studying at the university, doing a degree in music education, and then doing a choral music graduate program. And then I came back to Toronto, where I've worked in education and in performance ever since.
But 1976, there is a program of a choir, University of Toronto, and there we have like the first name. I think it's because of, also of quality, but alphabetical order, is Dan Bickle.
Yes, I would have been in my graduating year, I think, at that point.
But what you studied here was organ?
Every U of T student at that point in music had a program, but also had to have a major performance venue. So I started out as a pianist. I was studying organ privately as well, and then partway through I switched over to become an organ major. So I graduated in organ then as my performance choice. So, and I studied with the director and the organist who was here at St. Andrew's at the time, actually. So, and then I went to do some graduate work in Illinois in choral music.
In choral music. And that's where they told you that to sing you need a straw? Or what did you find it out? Because that's, for me, it's been a surprise.
No, no, the straw is a recent discovery from, as far as I'm concerned. I did a workshop this summer where the director of the workshop presented that as one of the possible tools that conductors could use with choirs. So I thought it was a very helpful tool, so I introduced it to SingTO.
Yes, because I think like singing may improve like the way you breathe, because, well, first of all, whenever we come to a rehearsal, it's like we need to relax, and you like relax us like swimming without a pool. But what's that? What's the science behind that routine?
I think in our society we carry a lot of tension, and because of the pace at which we live and the demands that are made on us in our workplaces. So when people show up for an evening rehearsal, they're tired. And so to try and get them to relax a bit will help their vocal production. You can't sing well if you're tight and tense. And so that's the goal behind it, to try and get people in a better physical shape in which to sing.
Who are the people behind SingTO?
At the moment, I think you've met most of them. Sandy Aird, who is with us weekly, he chairs that planning team. And then Claire is on it, and Oliver is on it, Margaret's on it, and Sarah is going to join us as well shortly.
One thing about concerts, I think, is like the connection with people. And for me, it's not so much about the audience knowing a lot, but about feeling a lot. And I remember when in Madrid we gave concerts in, you could say, a warming center, and they were the ones who gave us warm. So we're giving a concert for Out in the Cold, isn't it?
Yes.
What is Out in the Cold? Because for me that's very, very important concert.
The Out of the Cold program has run here for a very long time at St. Andrews, and every Monday evening, from November through to April, the congregation opens the doors and provides a hot meal for people who need them. And so they will have between 200 and 300 people who will sit here in this space, and then they'll go gradually throughout the evening. They get called to be able to pick up their dinner. And so while they sit here, we'll do some performing for them.
Absolutely. I think that's something you need, because music always is linked to different feelings. And what do you feel, or how have you chosen the pieces we are rehearsing and we're going to sing in the concerts? Because that's a task.
It's a challenging task, actually. I spent a lot of time over the summer looking for pieces that were holiday in spirit, but not particularly religious in tone, because that's the nature of this particular choir, that we do things that are more secular. So I also was looking for things that I thought amateurs could sing and would enjoy, and that an audience would respond to. So some of the pieces are familiar, and some of them are brand new, just recently composed actually, or put on the market. And it's good for singers to have some things they may have some connection with, but also some brand new things that will cause them to stretch and grow.
Absolutely. And are they part of your memories, or are they especially pieces that touch your feelings? Or
I choose music on a number of levels. I have to think it's a good arrangement. It has to be something that I would enjoy doing. It has to have a text that is worth working on, and I'm looking for variety, actually. So some of them are happier, some of them are more gentle, and some of them I've known for many years. Some of them are brand new to me this year. And that is what this particular group needs, I think.
What I like, especially about SingTO, is that you're very challenging. The team is very challenging, but at the same time, I'm having a great time. I remember some directors who, especially someone who got angry that never happens with you. And I don't know how you're listening to us because it's encouraging. I know sometimes, and more than sometimes, I'm not singing the right note. It may be a little down, a little up, but well, I feel like you're enjoying it.
I do enjoy it. I enjoy people's commitment and their energy and their willingness to work. It doesn't do a choir any good to be yelling at them because all they do is tighten up. And then when they tighten, the vocal production thing becomes very difficult and probably negative on the body. So you need to be able to leave a rehearsal without having a whole lot of vocal tightness. And so it's my job to keep my emotions in control so that I don't lose it in a rehearsal. Absolutely.
How do you work with it? So at the end we say, okay, all for one. Let's do it precisely.
Well, I have to make a judgment call on what I think we can fix at that point in time. And then you'll notice sometimes in rehearsal we'll sing a phrase over and over, multiple times, because I want you to learn, or the group to learn, the reflex. I want that reaction to become almost instinctive as they work. And it's important then, when it gets into the brain, I think the brain works on it even when you're not singing, and you'll come back and bring that resource to the next rehearsal. So sometimes we do drills, but often we isolate things so that we can work on the issues that we most need to sort of grapple with in order to make it an effective performance. And some of that's my judgment call, because we can't fix every last minute detail always. But I think about the audience and what they're going to receive and the impact of what we try to do. And it's my goal to get this choir to actually communicate effectively what we're doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely very important.
Because music is powerful, it moves people. And the neat thing about singing, and singing in a group this way, is that when people work together, the synergy of that work is often more than just if they were doing it alone. There is a phrase called the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's it. And for me, that's the case. When a group of amateurs give themselves wholeheartedly to something like this, they can rise above their level and do things which just shouldn't belong to us as a group because of that synergy. And so the goal is to get people to sort of come together to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's the feeling of group of, okay, we have to do it right now because that's the moment, and then you feel the emotion. You can get emotional because otherwise you don't sing, but sometimes you feel the emotion living inside you.
But you do have to communicate the emotion.
Yeah.
Because music should make your audience respond. They should be willing to cry if they need to, depending on the text, or willing to get up and dance. It depends on what the piece requires and what it says. And so that's the goal for a good performance. You want to, as an audience, remember, you want to come away having been moved by what you've heard. It's just like great theater. An actor can whisper at you, and you can feel like you've been punched just by how they deliver it. And so the same kind of thing happens in the musical art.
One of these days, you're going to see me crying in belief, but
That's okay.
up to now, I've been able to.
That's okay.
I've been able to hold them. And for you, what are like the musical themes, pieces, opera, organ pieces. What are the music that has moved you the most, or?
I'd have to say for me, it's the music of Bach. And that's not surprising since I've been a pianist and an organist.
Yes.
It is so rich that if I had to live without everything else, but could only choose one composer, I think Bach would be the one I would say, I'll take him. If I could have his material, I could live happily making music. There's such a profundity in it. It's genius writing.
Yeah.
So, yes, for me, it's Bach.
With Bach, it's like never-ending story, I would say. Isn't it? It's like you find more in only one piece every time you at least for me as a listener. I don't know as an interpreter.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a mark of great music, actually. And other composers' material can be like that as well. But for me, the choice would be Bach if I had to isolate it down to one. And there are pieces of Bach.
We can expand it like to 3 or 4.
Well, I mean, I have to say, it's one of the... I like romantic piano music. Schumann, Schubert, Brahms. The work of Brahms is very profound and very rich. And I tend to like the music I'm working on at the time.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to not have to do a lot of things that I'm not interested in. So one of the marks of a great piece is if I find myself singing it during the week while I'm doing something else. Then I go, oh, okay, this piece must be worth something. It's working in my head and it's coming back to talk to me.
Okay, I get it. It's, well, at least for me when I'm coming out of the rehearsals, and sometimes when I wake up the next day, it's still in the head what we are listening here.
I try to do that in rehearsals. I hope some of that stuff becomes an earworm.
Yeah.
Because that's how, when you absorb it at that level, then you can start to count on being able to do it in public.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Besides like having the top of musicians, any musical pieces for this Christmas? Besides going to our concerts, we're going to be very selective, but besides going to SingTO, to following SingTO in social media, what music would you include in Dan Bickle's playlist for Christmas?
Well, I do a lot of playing over Christmas because there's a lot of service. Yes. So I'm playing several arrangements, often arrangements of carols. The arrangements being ones that that resonate with me. So that if you come into a service or something like that, you will probably hear, as part of what the keyboard does, tunes and melodies you're familiar with. They may not always be in a form that you're familiar with, like I'm doing a version of Hark the Herald Angels Sing at the moment, that is in 6/8 time. And so it has a sort of a strange dance to it, if you will. So it makes you listen to it very differently. I didn't write this arrangement, but so that's the kind of thing once in a while I like to put into what we do. And yes, some of my favorite things. I always play some of my favorite music at Christmas time. Again, the music of Bach in a number of cases, but also settings of familiar carols that are particularly lovely, in my opinion.
Yes.
And one of the nice things about a more diverse look at the world these days is that we do have music from around the world. We often have, as directors, we have access to look at things and to know things that we didn't know existed before. Just various cultural stuff is now much more available to us, and that's quite lovely.
Yeah, and that's part of what's interesting of SingTO, that you met people here in Toronto for all around the world. I remember one bassist is going Christmas to London, and I told him, "Oh, I'm going to Spain. Maybe we meet at the airport." And then there was a tenor the other day who spoke to me in Spanish because he's from Mexico. There are people from, India, all around the world. Yes. It's
And that's the lovely thing about SingTO. Our demographic and our cultural diversity represents our city, and in very interesting and nice ways.
And there's also another thing that's diverse we haven't talked about. It's the diversity of voices. So for the audience who don't know exactly what's the tone of a voice, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the highest voices are sopranos, and the sort of middle,
you can play the piano.
the middle treble voices are usually alto, and that's where alto overlaps with tenor. So, altos often could sing tenor, and tenors can usually go up and sing alto, because men have a treble voice that most of us don't use very often, but it does exist. And so when you see a man singing in an alto section, they have a highly developed treble voice, or treble part of their voice. It'd be one part of the voice. And then we move on down through to bass, and that basic, and within that there are sort of specific categories. Most of our basses are what I would call baritones, which are higher basses.
You got me. Yeah.
So, we don't have many who can really go down into the, kind of level.
No.
And
not even this morning, I think.
No. But there is music available for that. I mean, and there's some great pieces that require people who can sing in those extremes. So, I mean, you can only program that if you've got voices to accommodate it. And one of the things about choosing music for SingTO is I was very careful to try and choose music that was in a more limited range, so that amateurs without a lot of experience could then come and do it successfully.
When I listen to the other people, it sounds lovely, and we don't even have. I think we help each other by, we can sing,
Yes, because people then have to memorize.
Yes.
The skill of reading or sight reading takes a while to develop, and it can be taught. But it's not a quick study kind of skill. So, and because you have to develop an ear for it and learn what those things feel like, it's quite possible, but it's a whole learning process in itself. And we're here to learn repertoire, to sing for an audience. So I do very, very little sight reading with you in that sense.
Yes, sometimes I think it's like, at least for me, is remember, you have to go down now because it's like the harmony with the different voices.
That's right.
To sound good. I don't know exactly if you have like one moment. There are like very, very intensive, emotional moments related to music. And when you, as a professional musician, if you have to get a memory or two memories of special events, special places, something, could you share it with us?
There are many, I would say, so that's hard. That's very hard. For me, it's probably moments as a singer in a choir. The University of Toronto choir, actually. We sang in the cathedral in Ottawa once, and it was a very lovely resonant acoustic, and I have these warm memories of the sound in that space. And it was a chant-like piece, so it just had a special essence in an environment for which it would have been written. It made such beautiful emotional sense in that context. Do you remember the pieces? It was the Duraflé Ubicaritas, which is in itself a wonderful composition. So it, not surprising that when you're in a resonant acoustic with other people who love the piece and you're singing, that it is an emotional moment.
Yes, absolutely. So then with that moment, I think we can leave it. Thank you for directing us, for also caring so much about being precise, because I think that's the important part in general. It's something that you enjoy, and I think you can learn enjoying in music that it takes effort.
Oh yes.
But wow, when you do it.
Exactly. It's like anything. You can't do high performance athletics without being precise and without putting in all those steps along the way. And the arts are the same.
Yes, and the piano, for instance.
Yep.
Since 10 years old, and now with 11, you play it perfectly. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dan, very much. Thank you also for following this interview, following SingTO, and keep following, because you'll have lots of news about good music, about feeling music, about, what makes us emotional and what makes us live.